overcome them all. HopeNetwork.org/autism.
Their average age is 16. Most are gang members, and they all committed felonies.
She actually said that I raped her and stuff.
I kicked her, stomped on her, choked her. I beat her up pretty bad.
Troubled and dangerous, these teens have been sentenced to a special prison to save them from a life of crime.
You think I'm a joke?
You pay attention!
If they can't make it here, they'll be sent to adult prison, where they'll do hard time.
They've been sold 10, 15 times before they even get there.
I don't want that. I'm 15. I got a life to live.
Welcome to the Youthful Offender System, the best chance for Colorado's violent teen felons. It's intake for a new group of teens at the Youthful Offender System, or YOS, in Pueblo, Colorado.
You still up? You're gonna be out of the DIU right farther. You got that? So yes, sir. I'm telling you, this ain't the Girl Scout. Louder. So yes, sir. Shoulder to shoulder.
Intake is a shock to their system, and it's meant to be. Assault, robbery, and attempted murder. Their crimes are so serious, they've been prosecuted as adults.
Keep your eyes looking that way. Do you understand, sir?
These inmates may not know it, but they are at a crossroads. Succeed here, and they have a shot at a crime-free life. Fail, and they'll go to adult prison, where they'll be at the mercy of hardened criminals. 18-year-old Martin Ramirez knows YOS is his last chance. Ramirez has been in and out of mental hospitals and juvenile programs since he was 12. Anger problems and assault charges have isolated him from the family he loves.
I got suspended from almost every school I went to. I've been restrained, maced. On one thing twice, I was swinging.
Despite his problems, Ramirez says he graduated high school with a 3.9 average. But that didn't keep him out of trouble.
I wanted more and more. Respect here, respect there. And then pretty soon, before you know it, you want respect where everybody knows your name.
Now, Ramirez has been convicted of attempted second-degree murder.
Details of his offense was a domestic violence case. Beat his girlfriend, forced her to have sex with him while he held a gun to her head. He claims it was consensual. The original charges on this were kidnapping, 2 counts of sexual assault, attempted murder, assault, menacing, handgun possession by a juvenile, and 2 violent crime enhancements.
Intelligence Officer Lou Size says Ramirez is gang-affiliated.
He's a Sur 13, La Familia, and then his moniker is Malo, M-A-L-O.
Another new inmate is a first-time offender. He's never been in prison before. His name, Cameron Payne. 18-year-old Payne hasn't seen his parents since he was found guilty. He spent 5 months in county jail waiting for his sentencing. His father remarried and moved away. Now, he feels alone. During intake at YOS, he tells an interviewer that he longs for his parents.
What's your relationship like with your mom?
Very, very well.
Okay. And why is that? Why would you say that?
Because my mom loves me and takes care of me all she can, and I've caused her a lot of stress through her life. She's still there for me no matter what. She's still here for me now.
Payne's crime, second-degree assault.
He sexually assaulted his girlfriend, forced her onto the bed after church. His original charges included 2 counts of sexual assault, menacing, 2 counts of false imprisonment greater than 12 hours, second-degree assault, and 3 violent crime enhancements.
This morning when we were talking to him and we had him out and we're giving him all the ins and outs of being in boot camp, he wants to give constant feedback. But this is my story. This is my excuse.
Now, boot camp kicks into high gear. It's 0 day. The inmates have heard about 0 day, but whatever they've heard can't prepare them for what happens next.
Drill instructors, meet your residents.
Like a deer caught in the headlights. You don't know how they're gonna act. You don't know where they're gonna push you to, what they're gonna say.
Drill instructor Sergeant Valencia says the inmates have to know who's in charge.
In your face, that's where it starts. They're looking at you like you're a joke, and who do you think you are yelling at me? They have played on that, I think, a lot through their lives, that people are intimidated by them. They're intimidated by their youth, their violence, their gang. That's not gonna cut it here.
The DIs push the inmates through a set of military-style exercises. Eventually, the program aims to instill discipline, strength, and pride. But right now, the goal is simply to break them down.
John out front. It's just water. Get it out there. Lock that elbow. Man, yes, man. Gun down, Sergeant. On the command. Get it out. You gonna do something, sir? You gonna show any kind of heart at all? Lock your elbow. Beat yourself.
You're powerless. No matter how bad you are, how strong you are, no matter who you are on the streets in here, you're nobody.
You just want to yell back or push them away, but I'm just looking at it like if I don't deal with this, I'm going to prison for 9 years.
After 2 hours of relentless drills, the inmates begin to crumble. But they are not allowed to quit, and there's more punishment ahead. The DIs force them to elbow their way through a sand pit.
I almost passed out. My head is like throbbing, and I really couldn't see straight.
Pushed past their limits, the offenders can hardly stand.
The only person that's gonna get me through this is me. The only person that's really gonna push me is me. In the end, if I mess up or I fail, my life's over. Everybody else's life goes on.
A prison nurse makes sure they have survived intact.
Hello?
Arms out to your sides. Do you have any injuries to declare?
No, man.
For Ramirez, Payne, and the others, the day isn't over yet. Now, the DIs want them to write about it.
You're gonna take this piece of paper and this pen, sir, and you're gonna write down what you think of what you just experienced. You understand me? Sir, yes, sir. Positive, negative, get it done.
Getting broken down is brutal. Some inmates will describe 0 day as the worst day of their lives, but it could be a lot worse. All the inmates know that if they screw up here, they'll be revocated, sent to an adult prison, where they may wind up as prey.
They say it doesn't happen, but they get raped, they get beat up.
They've been sold 10, 15 times before they even get there. Sold to provide sexual favors, to be pimped out, to provide money to the older inmates, to have their families bring in contraband.
Adult prison is so harsh that the suicide rate for teens is 36 times higher than at juvenile facilities. Ramirez and Payne have no intention of failing at YOS, but after 0 day, they don't know how they're going to survive it either.
Pay attention now. Perfect practice makes perfect. Everyone stand by. Sir, yes, sir.
It's day 2 at Colorado's YOS boot camp, and the DIs have 4 weeks to break the inmates down and rebuild them from the bottom up.
Bring your arm.
Every morning at 5 a.m., the offenders start a 14-hour day, packed with commands. Lesson number 1, there's a correct procedure for everything. The attention to detail is intense.
We always step off with that left foot, not
They are not allowed to talk or walk forwards. Everyone will eat in exactly the same way. No deviations.
Trays! Fix your fork, sir. Fix your fork.
For first-time offender Cameron Payne, learning prison protocol is a challenge. Payne struggles to master the details of any task, and he is terrified of making a mistake.
Put the bags down! Yes, sir! On the boxes, sir! Yes, sir! You like to sleep on the floor, sir? Yes, sir!
Martin Ramirez is a repeat juvenile offender who has been in and out of state institutions for the last 6 years. He is often the first to grasp what is expected and performs well, like in this demonstration of how to make a military bed.
We have a corner right there, right? There has to be how many inches showing? 18 inches, man. Outstanding, sir. Outstanding.
But the DIs want more than performance.
Work together, help each other out. You guys are no longer individuals. You are a team.
They want these kids to learn to take responsibility for themselves and others. So here at YOS, they succeed or fail together.
We're like all one person. If one of us screws up, we all pay for it.
If I got this paper right, how big is the standard size? 8 by 12 inches, man. What? 8 by 12 inches, man. 11.5 by 8.
But teamwork doesn't come easily to Ramirez.
We got Payne, and he's not very motivated. But since he's my teammate, I have to put effort into him. I can say no, and I'm not going to help him, but then I'm quitting on myself because it's my program to help him. So it's like a hard situation to be in here because he fails, I fail.
Payne tries to do whatever is asked, but even memorizing a simple rally cry is a struggle. Yet failure here is not an option. Payne's got to get it right, and he's got to give it all he's got. If the inmates don't show heart and teamwork, they risk a punishment. Here, punishment is called a CAPE, corrective action through physical exercise. The first week, the group is caped repeatedly. Sometimes it's Payne. Sometimes it's another inmate. Sometimes it's to remind them who's in charge.
Keep in formation. Hydrate. Don't drink your water, Payne.
Every time Payne messes up, Ramirez gets ticked off. But at boot camp, there's nothing he can do about it.
Here you'll get caught for everything, so if I fight the person, then I'm getting in trouble. I'm getting charges, and I'm just gonna end up going to prison.
The DIs feel the tension and keep the inmates on a short leash. They watch closely to make sure someone doesn't get hurt.
Because we do everything fast does not mean we look half-assed, sir. Yes, sir. I have no idea why I had on sideways, Payne.
Payne is under pressure to prove to the DIs and the inmates that he can pull his weight.
It is hard to be here, I can tell you that right now. Some DIs, they're like, no, you're not gonna pass, you won't make it through this. They're not gonna prove me wrong, I'll prove them wrong.
We're gonna start every day just like this if we can't figure out.
Ramirez realizes that the only way to get through boot camp is to play by the rules.
I've been doing what I have to do. Yes, man, no matter what, because you're not gonna win. So I chose to do everything I gotta do to get out of here.
Ramirez and Payne have 3 more weeks of retraining. If they make it, they'll serve the rest of their sentence in a far different world. Main campus. Not far from boot camp, 170 young felons eat, live, and work together while they serve their time. All the inmates are 15 to 24 years old. They room in units of 30 to 40 on halls with unlocked doors. They work, and they get job training. Everyone is required to go to school.
I think the main thing YOS is trying to accomplish is get the residents educated, get them a high school diploma, and show them there is something out there.
The state of Colorado spends almost $65,000 per inmate per year, with the hope that if they can change how these kids think and act, they won't come back. But most are violent felons, and change is hard won. 15-year-old Corey Miller just graduated boot camp a few weeks earlier, but a month of retraining didn't make a dent in his thinking.
I have an authority problem, really. I can't take that. All that yelling every day, constantly, like I couldn't, that's not for me.
Compared to boot camp, Miller thought life on main campus would be a piece of cake.
I was picturing it was gonna be calm and mellow, like paradise.
He was wrong.
There's so many gangs in here. I knew I was gonna get tested right away, and like, second hour I was here. They called me to the bathroom.
Miller found himself face to face with a rival gang member.
I told him that I was a Crip, he was a Blood. The next thing you know, we just fighting, throwing body shots. It was a shocker, so I was kind of scared, I'm not even gonna lie.
Miller's bruises were discovered later in body checks. Many inmates know how to hurt each other without getting caught, so every night, officers examine each offender for injuries. They're looking for signs of an assault called a body up. In this kind of fight, the attacker avoids the face and beats the torso, where bruises won't be discovered unless someone is looking for them. Officer Lou Panetta says with 30 inmates on a hall, it's hard to know what's going on all the time.
We like to think that we can keep everybody safe, but all it takes is 1 minute. Just a head turn, and something can happen.
In the last year, YOS recorded 70 altercations. 9 victims were taken to the hospital. Miller says there are a lot of fights, and that it's common for gangs to torture new inmates by stretching them.
2 people grab your legs, 2 people grab your arms, and they all pull a different way. And somebody punches on your chest or your stomach. I've seen a dude poop on themselves, pee on themselves.
Sometimes they use a heat-producing cream called muscle rub.
And then there's this stuff called muscle rub, and they'll squeeze it in your pants and rub it around, and that stuff burns. Seen people scream. It's crazy.
Lieutenant Lou Size knows all about how new inmates are tested. Size has run intelligence at YOS for the last year.
Anything going on? These guys all probably know. Nothing's going on? I hope not. No.
He tracks the gangs and their potential security threats.
All right.
As far as security threats go, it could be a possible escape, it could be contraband into the facility, it could be possible riot issues, them retaliating against another security threat group, it could be murder.
Size has a database of every inmate's gang tattoos, scars, and markings. The main gangs at YOS are the Sureños and the Crips.
If you notice the C is crossed out in the K, that'd be Crip killer.
70% of YOS inmates are active gang members. Getting them to change their gang thinking is a big challenge.
I almost look at it as like an alcoholic. The temptation's always there. We always have to be confronting that, saying, you know what, that is wrong. We can't do that.
Most of the inmates at boot camp are also gang members, and they're worried about main campus. The exception is Payne. His challenge isn't gangs, it's an intense desire to fit in and be liked.
Sometimes I'm easily misled. I'm drawn into negative behaviors by others sometimes, you know.
Ramirez belongs to the Sureño 13, an offshoot of the Mexican Mafia. 2 weeks into boot camp, he can't imagine turning down a fight.
They tell you to leave it at the door and it's not allowed here. But the thing is, you can't leave stuff at the door because most of us have tattoos. Most of us, that's who we are. And it's been like, it's our life.
Ramirez faces the same dilemma that most YOS inmates face. He'll have to decide whether his allegiance will be to his gang or ultimately to himself. Juvenile offenders Martin Ramirez and Cameron Payne have made it to the halfway mark at the YOS boot camp. They're finally beginning to get a handle on their drills and routines. Most importantly, they're learning to work together for the first time. But that's only half the battle. 4 out of 5 of these teens are gang members. They're hardwired to solve conflict with violence. That's not going to work at YOS. In a class called Life Skills, Sergeant Valencia challenges the beliefs that underlie their street thinking.
If I want to push your buttons, you make it easy. Is any of you a punk? Or any of you? Being called a simple name will make you give up your life. Here I've got you to engage in a fight, maybe shoot me, maybe stab me, maybe do a drive-by on my house, and now you're going to go to prison. Because I called you something?
You've got to focus a lot on getting them to identify their anger issues, learning how to identify what makes them angry, how to know they're getting angry.
Like, since I've been here, like, in the boot camp and everything, I've been disrespected, everything.
You've been disrespected by whom?
Just people.
Just people in general? Everyone?
Not everybody.
Do DIs disrespect you?
A little bit.
I'm an easily angry person. I get mad all the time.
Next, the DIs will test Ramirez to see if he can control his temper. The offenders will be called into the office one at a time to find out if they can do one of the toughest things for any gang kid to do: handle their anger when provoked. Ramirez is certain he can perform under pressure.
I think I'm gonna pass the test today, for sure.
But since he is the most self-assured, he will be tested the hardest. The DIs taunt him to see if he can take it.
Come here, Ramirez. Now stay right there. Come here, Ramirez. I can't hear you. Go away. Go away. Ramirez.
Ready this time?
Sir, yes, sir.
Ramirez is unnerved, but Lieutenant Bergman pushes him further. He asks Ramirez if he thinks he deserves to pass the test.
Tell me why. Because I worked harder and I pushed myself to stay on track and keep positive.
Just coming in here and saying I've worked hard is not going to cut it. How about if I want to make a change? How about that, sir? Not just me.
Ramirez thought all he had to do was perform well, but Bergman wants to see some change in attitude.
What good would it do you to get out of here right now and go make the same mistakes you made when you got here? Huh? Don't you think you should maybe learn a little bit about yourself?
Ramirez is confused, but he manages to keep his composure. And because of that, Bergman will pass him. All the other inmates also make it through, and they are rewarded for their efforts with a change of uniform, new khaki pants.
Get your hands off game formation.
But 2 days later, Payne messes up again. He oversleeps and lies about it. The DIs put him back in a yellow jumpsuit, and everyone is called to the yard.
We're supposed to be a team. One person gets a consequence. Oh, that's fine. That's his consequence, right?
Sir, sir.
But
Now the entire group will get caped because of Payne.
since we're a team and Mr. Payne needs to get his khakis back, I'll make you a deal. 7 minutes, 110% effort. So now you're willing to be a team and sacrifice a few minutes for Mr. Payne.
Sir, yes, sir.
Go!
Get your knees up. Get your arms out. Get behind, Payne. Back. Faster, faster. Payne, I don't know why you're moving slower than everybody else. You got something more to gain here. You better start hurrying up. Yo, Payne. Yo, Payne.
The offenders kick it out and show the DIs they can work together for a teammate.
30 seconds left. You ready? Back, front, hey.
But the bar has been raised. Ramirez and Payne are beginning to understand that they can't slack off. They need to improve each and every day, or they're not going to pass boot camp.
I think I learned you don't want to get too relaxed. I just obeyed the rules because I thought I got my khakis. I'm like, I deserve this. That's what I told myself. But now I understand that I still gotta keep it going.
As from this moment forward, Mr. Payne is now a khaki again. I put it on all of you to make sure he stays a khaki and you stay a khaki.
Sir, yes, sir.
You want to be treated like men, act like men.
While Payne is focused on making it through boot camp, Martin Ramirez is worried about something bigger. He's worried about how he's going to handle his temper when he's faced with the gang action on main campus.
It'll be hard to decide whether I'm gonna be down there fighting and doing what I did before, or down there actually trying to make a difference in my life. Here, you have no choice. Either you do good or you do good. If you don't do good, then you're gonna have to do good tomorrow. There's no choice. But down there, you have your choices come back to play.
Down at main campus, Corey Miller is still suffering the consequences of last week's fight with a rival gang member. He's been demoted to detention level status, or DL. He has no privileges, and he's back in the yellow jumpsuit for a week.
I guess they expected me to be like, no, I'm trying to change my life or something. But you know, I'm not that type of person. If somebody asks me that if I want to fight or something, I'm not going to sit there and be like, nah, I don't want to fight you, because that's just how I was raised.
But for former gang leader Michael Ratcliffe, fighting and breaking the rules at YOS is a bad idea.
You go against the grain or you go with it. And here, truthfully, I would want to go against it.
5 years ago, Ratcliffe stuck up a house full of people for drugs and money.
Walked in, made them put their hands up, made them put their hands on their face like this, duct tape their face. I duct tape all 5 of them, made them lay down and everything like that.
Ratcliffe was convicted of second-degree burglary and given a 6-year sentence. Now 23, he is considered a model prisoner. When new inmates get in trouble, YOS sometimes turns to Ratcliffe for help. Now, they want him to straighten Miller out.
Sometimes they screw up and screw up and screw up, and they're gone. Sometimes they screw up and screw up, and they're like, hey, this is enough. I screwed up and screwed up, and said, hey, this is enough. Hopefully he gets the picture.
Miller's been fighting since he was 10 or 11. The gang life is what he knows.
Follow my cousins, and that's how they taught me. If you want to fight you better fight him, or we're going to beat you up.
Miller was 15 when he committed the crime that landed him at YOS.
We was walking, just being dumb, and we seen a guy, and we just started fighting with him.
For any particular reason?
No, for no reason at all. It was stupid. And then when he was down, I stabbed him 7 times in the back of his leg.
Ratcliffe lives across the hall from Miller and watches him closely. He reminds Miller to be his own man and think about the consequences of his actions.
My turning point was my family, constantly worrying about me, being in a hole, why am I in trouble, what's going on with me. I love my mom to death, so when it started hurting her heart and everything, I started realizing, like, hey, you need to change your thinking pattern.
But Miller isn't getting it, and just a few days later, he's back in trouble for stealing.
All my pants and my shirts, they're old, wrinkly, dingy. Everybody else's clothes is all stiff and crispy. I walk by the laundry room, I see some pants, 2 pair of pants, brand new. So I was like, man, just go grab those pants. I like being clean, you know, looking fresh.
You always have choices in life, and his choice was wrong. The longer he stays here, he'll start fully understanding that these little things can turn into big things real fast.
YOS will let Miller make mistakes, but too many mistakes, and he could get kicked out. Instead of serving 3 years, he served 8 in adult prison. Even Miller knows adult prison is no place for teens.
When I went to go visit my uncles in adult prison, they were just monsters in there. They were just big. It kind of scared me.
Miller's fears of being revocated are shared by almost every offender at YOS, including Payne.
My nightmare is going to prison and getting raped.
Payne's fears are real. Sexual assault of teens is 5 times more likely in adult prison than in juvenile facilities. The stakes are even higher for Ramirez. He says there is a gang hit out on him. He is afraid if he goes to an adult facility, he'll be at the mercy of the inmates.
This is my last opportunity for change. And once you go to prison, there ain't no, you're gonna be good, there's gonna be positive peers, you're gonna run a program, it's gonna be, you do it their way or the highway. This is my last chance.
While a lot of Miller's family is locked up, prison is not the future he wants for himself.
The lowest number they're doing is 16, the highest is 77. That's basically the rest of your life in there. You're gonna die in prison. I don't want that. I'm 15. I got a life to live still.
YOS has given Miller the tools to turn his life around. Whether he saves himself now is up to him.
seconds. Button up.
It's week 3 at the YOS boot camp, and the inmates are still putting out 100% every day. This morning, a physical fitness, or PT test. They're joined by inmates from main campus who have been sent back because of attitude problems. Ramirez and the others dig deep to make it through the last 7 days. The last thing they want is to do boot camp a second time.
Knock it out. One more. Let's go. One more. Hurry up.
Payne puts out more than ever. A recent letter from his family gave him the push he's needed. If he makes it through boot camp, his dad will come to graduation.
I was feeling really abandoned because I didn't know if he was coming. I started doing a lot better because I'm not thinking about my dad very much anymore. I'm not worried because I know he's coming now.
Like Payne, Ramirez needs a family connection to survive prison. Despite years of trouble, family is still his lifeline. Every morning he looks at his photos to get motivated for the day.
My mom, my dad, my sister, like my brother. Just everybody that means something to me. Realize I can't give up.
Ramirez was first locked up in county jail on his attempted murder charge 9 months ago. He hasn't seen his family since.
9 months is a long time to go without a hug. It's crazy how much you miss something once it's gone.
At main campus, Michael Ratcliffe is just months away from starting his parole and rejoining his family. It's been a long journey for a teen who was a gang leader and whose teacher once predicted he could end up in jail or dead. He spent more than 4 years on main campus, earning not only a high school diploma, but also almost half his college credits. He's gotten extensive counseling and taken classes in anger management.
Instead of me and him duking it out, fighting mano a mano, we can talk it out in a more pro-social way.
But that's the easy part. The hard part is changing his gang thinking.
If you want something, just ask for it. If you can't ask for it.
We have groups here to help you understand it. When this situation occurs, you do not have to shoot this dude. You don't have to punch him in his face. Talk to him first.
You know the rules. You know, keep yourself under control and get off the hill.
Handle yourself so when you put in certain situations, you won't just go outrageous with it.
In a few weeks, Ratcliffe will be assessed for Phase 2, a 90-day program where he will do community service, learn how to balance a checkbook, and find a place to live. Things he's never done. If he succeeds, Michael Ratcliffe will then start a year of parole, and YOS will help him find a job. If he makes it through all of this, Colorado will give him a clean record. But Ratcliffe will always have a gang history. Steering clear of the gangs and their temptations will be one of his toughest struggles.
Only thing that's on my mind is failure. I do not want to fail. I will not lose, and I'm not going to put myself in that predicament. I just pray, thank God every day. I just don't want to fail.
A lot rests on his success. A boy he wants to set an example for. A wife who has waited for him. A daughter he barely knows. Of everything he's been through in the last 4 years, he says he has one regret.
Actually not being there for my kids, for not being there the first day of school, and I'm sorry for it, and I regret it. But you live and you learn, and I learned the importance of life and how to cherish it.
But while Michael Ratcliffe prepares to leave YOS, Corey Miller is sinking fast.
It's just been on DL for 2 days and I'm already in trouble again.
Miller says he was in the hall when he heard noises coming from one of the rooms. 2 inmates were wrestling.
I opened the door and I was like, y'all need to stop. They just kept going. So I went over by his collar and I pulled him back and he fell and he hit the door. And then I pushed Gianni back because he tried to rush him again. I pushed him back and then they said that we was fighting.
Lieutenant Williams, Miller's case manager, isn't buying it for a second.
He's telling me that he was trying to break up the altercation between the 2 of them. However, one of the residents involved say he did in fact hit one of the other offenders in the head.
Now, it was really no reason for me to jump him, you know what I'm saying, because he was already getting beat up. So now I'm in trouble, and I'm about to probably go up to the hole for something I didn't do.
You look upset.
Yeah, I am. Very upset.
Now, Miller faces charges for fighting.
The reason we're doing this, Miller, is because based on all the facts that I received of the incident, it appears more like you were involved.
Once again, he's lost all his privileges, including the one he cares about the most, calling home.
I just want to call my mom, because I ain't talked to her in a long time. If I can call my mom, I'll be cool.
Lieutenant Williams thinks Miller needs constant supervision. She decides to move him into Ratcliffe's room. Ratcliffe tries to warn Miller that he's heading for real trouble.
I told him this ain't the path he want to take. If he keeps having this consistent negative behavior, he'll be gone. He will be revocated.
For Ratcliffe, there's a real risk. Miller's bad behavior could reflect poorly on him. That's something Ratcliffe will prevent at all costs.
I wouldn't let him put himself in that position to jeopardize me. I wouldn't let nobody put themselves in that position to jeopardize Michael, regardless.
It's very clear. Miller can sink if he wants to, but he's not taking Ratcliffe with him. Day 28. Ramirez, Payne, and their fellow inmates have made it. They are leaving boot camp. Today, they graduate. They've endured weeks of mental and physical challenges. Now they celebrate their achievements with family they haven't seen since they were first arrested. The entire group carries itself differently than the young men who arrived at boot camp 28 days ago. Sergeant Valencia has seen them change in big ways.
It's worth it if even one kid is successful and his life is saved. You really want them to succeed. And when that kid goes out there and does, it's awesome.
Most improved, Resident Payne. Thank you, sir.
Payne is awarded Inmate Most Improved.
The difference for me now and me when we first got here is I had no pride, no self-discipline. I had hardly anything to count on, you know? When I first got here, I'm like, oh, I can't even do 25 push-ups. Now I do 80 push-ups.
Ramirez now says he wants to change his gang ways. The question is, can he really overcome his anger?
If I let somebody's actions frustrate me, then really I'm just letting them have power over me. And they get power over me, and I just cause myself to get in trouble over somebody else, and it's not something I really want to do anymore.
For the time being, Ramirez and Payne can stop being prisoners and just be the kids their families know and love. But their visit can only last a few hours. Shackled and dressed for transport, Ramirez and the others head to main campus. They're finally free from the rigor of boot camp. But there will be no DIs to tell them what to do. And they'll trade the security of a locked cell for a room full of fellow inmates. How they handle themselves is now their responsibility. As Ramirez approaches the back door at main campus, he's nervous about the gangs and prison life.
Words I can handle, I'm still coming to terms with if they put their hands on me. You can say you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, but it all boils down to when you're in the situation, what you're really gonna do.
Not every kid can complete the program. 1 in 4 teens will be revocated and sent to adult prison. But of the remainder, 70% will stay out of prison for good.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, you came a long way, you know.
Michael Ratcliffe appears to have made it. But as he plans his release, Officer Lou Panetta continues to challenge his choices.
So when you get out, I mean, you're not going to be affiliated with the gang life anymore.
Most definitely not. I mean, I learned.
But I mean, a lot of guys they're gonna see you on the outs and they're gonna want to.
I mean, that comes with the territory. Yeah. It's on me to make the choices, and my family's more important than any of these individuals out there.
It's good attitude.
Ratcliffe appears confident, but soon he'll face the biggest test of his life, returning to the street where he was a gang leader.
Let's go, Doug. Let's go. PTR up front. Let's go.
Corey Miller lasted a day and a half before he got into yet another fight. This time, he's gone too far for even Ratcliffe to help him. He's been put in segregation, locked down 23 hours a day, and he is now one step closer to getting kicked out of YOS and going to adult prison.
What's going on for me is just problems right now. Just going through a stage, I guess. Because I did this to myself. I created that fight. Yeah, I didn't have to hit him, but I decided to hit him. I got myself put back here, so it's kind of my fault.
Miller is called to a review, where he is warned about his behavior.
I think you absolutely have the potential to do much better.
We need to make sure that you can function well, not let negative influences dictate your behavior, okay? And I think you need to think about what you're doing. You need to think about what you're doing and the kind of things that can happen because of that, okay?
Like they said, I do have an anger problem. I need to work really towards a lot of that. Because if I don't, then I probably will end up getting revocated. Doing 8 years in prison. I don't want to do that.
Corey Miller sees that he needs to make different choices, but at 15, he just has no idea how to do it. And if he doesn't figure it out, he'll trade his 3-year sentence at YOS for 8 years of hard time. YOS will give these young felons every opportunity to give up violence and turn their lives around. But what happens next to these troubled teens is ultimately up to them.
Overcome them all. HopeNetwork.org/autism.
Their average age is 16. Most are gang members, and they all committed felonies.
She actually said that I raped her and stuff.
I kicked her, stomped on her, choked her. I beat her up pretty bad.
Troubled and dangerous, these teens have been sentenced to a special prison to save them from a life of crime.
You think I'm a joke?
You pay attention!
If they can't make it here, they'll be sent to adult prison, where they'll do hard time.
They've been sold 10, 15 times before they even get there.
I don't want that. I'm 15. I got a life to live.
Welcome to the youthful offender system, the best chance for Colorado's violent teen felons. It's intake for a new group of teens at the Youthful Offender System, or YOS, in Pueblo, Colorado.
You still up? You're gonna be having a DIU like father! You got that? Sir, yes, sir! I'm telling you, this ain't the Girl Scout. Louder! Sir, yes, sir! Show me the show!
Intake is a shock to their system, and it's meant to be. Assault, robbery, and attempted murder. Their crimes are so serious, they've been prosecuted as adults.
Keep your eyes looking that way! Do you understand, sir?
These inmates may not know it, but they are at a crossroads. Succeed here, and they have a shot at a crime-free life. Fail, and they'll go to adult prison, where they'll be at the mercy of hardened criminals. 18-year-old Martin Ramirez knows YOS is his last chance. Ramirez has been in and out of mental hospitals and juvenile programs since he was 12. Anger problems and assault charges have isolated him from the family he loves.
I got suspended from almost every school I went to. I've been restrained, maced. I won't think twice, I'll swing.
Despite his problems, Ramirez says he graduated high school with a 3.9 average. But that didn't keep him out of trouble.
I wanted more and more. Respect here, respect there. And then pretty soon, before you know it, you want respect where everybody knows your name.
Now, Ramirez has been convicted of attempted second-degree murder.
Details of his offense was a domestic violence case. Beat his girlfriend, forced her to have sex with him while he held a gun to her head. He claims it was consensual. The original charges on this were kidnapping, 2 counts of sexual assault, attempted murder, assault, menacing, handgun possession by a juvenile, and 2 violent crime enhancements.
Intelligence officer Lou Size says Ramirez is gang-affiliated.
He's a Sur 13, La Familia, and then his moniker is Malo, M-A-L-O.
Another new inmate is a first-time offender. He's never been in prison before. His name, Cameron Payne. 18-year-old Payne hasn't seen his parents since he was found guilty. He spent 5 months in county jail waiting for his sentencing. His father remarried and moved away. Now, he feels alone. During intake at YOS, he tells an interviewer that he longs for his parents.
What's your relationship like with your mom?
Very, very well.
Okay. And why is that? Why would you say that?
Because my mom loves me and takes care of me all she can, and I've caused her a lot of stress through her life. She's still there for me no matter what. She's still here for me now.
Payne's crime, second-degree assault.
He sexually assaulted his girlfriend, forced her out of the bed after church. His original charges included 2 counts of sexual assault, menacing, 2 counts of false imprisonment greater than 12 hours, second-degree assault, and 3 violent crime enhancements.
This morning when we were talking to him and we had him out and we're giving him all the ins and outs of being in boot camp, he wants to give constant feedback. But this is my story. This is my excuse.
Now, boot camp kicks into high gear. It's 0 day. The inmates have heard about 0 day, but whatever they've heard can't prepare them for what happens next.
Drill instructors, teach your residents.
Like a deer caught in the headlights. You don't know how they're gonna act. You don't know where they're gonna push you to, what they're gonna say.
Drill instructor Sergeant Valencia says the inmates have to know who's in charge.
In your face, that's where it starts. They're looking at you like you're a joke, and who do you think you are yelling at me? They have played on that, I think, a lot through their lives, that people are intimidated by them. They're intimidated by their youth, their violence, their gang. That's not gonna cut it here.
The DIs push the inmates through a set of military-style exercises. Eventually, the program aims to instill discipline, strength, and pride. But right now, the goal is simply to break them down.
John out front. Stress water! Get it out there! Lock that elbow! Man, yes, man! Gun down, Sergeant. On the command! Get it out! You gonna do something, sir? You gonna show any power? Lock your elbow! Fix yourself!
You're powerless. No matter how bad you are, how strong you are, no matter who you are on the streets, and here you're nobody.
You just want to yell back or push them away, but I'm just looking at it like if I don't deal with this, I'm going to prison for 9 years.
After 2 hours of relentless drills, the inmates begin to crumble. But they are not allowed to quit, and there's more punishment ahead. The DIs force them to elbow their way through a sand pit.
I almost passed out. My head is like throbbing, and I really couldn't see straight.
Pushed past their limits, the offenders can hardly stand.
How about your position up there? You are not hired! Sir, no, sir! Hey, don't move around, man. Sir, yes, sir!
The only person that's gonna get me through this is me. The only person that's really gonna push me is me. In the end, if I mess up or I fail, my life's over. Everybody else's life goes on.
A prison nurse makes sure they have survived intact.
Hello? Arms out to your sides. Do you have any injuries to declare?
No, ma'am.
For Ramirez, Payne, and the others, the day isn't over yet. Now, the DIs want them to write about it.
You're gonna take this piece of paper and this pen, sir, and you're gonna write down what you think of what you just